When you think of Japan, what do you think of? I think of samurai, cherry blossoms, amazing sushi, unique culture and traditions. Japanese culture was something that I was interested in from a very young age, playing Nintendo to watching Japanese anime. I was always fascinated with this unique culture of the East. The time had finally come, and I had the opportunity to spend 40 days backpacking across this beautiful country. And in this video, I want to share my experiences. The goal for this trip was to focus the majority of our time in the central and southern regions of Japan. Japan is simply too big to traverse all of the country in only 40 days, and the north requires a separate trip. I would love to see one day Sapporo and the areas of the north, but for this trip, it was just too difficult to stretch ourselves that thin, so we decided to stay just in the central and southern areas of Japan. Our goal was to fly into Tokyo to start, do a trip around the central and southern areas, and end up back in Tokyo before we leave. Let's start with flying into Tokyo. There's two different airports you can choose from, Haneda or Narita. Haneda is located close to Tokyo, whereas Narita is about an hour outside of Tokyo in the Chiba prefecture. To get to Tokyo from Narita, you're gonna have to choose either a taxi, metro, or bus. We chose bus because it's the cheapest option. If you can, fly into Haneda because it'll be a lot easier to get to the airport and to get out of the airport. If you go to Narita, you're typically gonna have cheaper flights, which is why we chose Narita. Haneda is gonna be a little bit more expensive. All right, now let's actually get into the trip. So once we arrived in Narita Airport, we took a bus into Tokyo. And the first place we arrived was Tokyo Station. Now this is an ultra famous metro station in Japan, and it's one of the best places to simply people watch. Tokyo Station receives roughly 500,000 people passing through every day. One interesting thing about Japan are the metro stations. It's incredible the amount of infrastructure that was put in to this completely organized place. You can go and have a coffee, you can buy gifts for your friends and family, you can even do your grocery shopping inside of the metro areas. One thing that was very interesting to observe as an American was how organized the culture of the metro station was. People in Japan are very respectful of other people's space. You'll notice when you're going up and down the stairs, everybody stays to one side to allow people to pass through. Another thing you notice is that on the metro itself, people don't talk. It's kind of disrespectful to talk on the metro. People are typically going to work, they're tired, and so they want to give everybody their space. Arriving in Tokyo for the first part of our trip was the most culture shock that I had throughout the trip. There was all kinds of sights and sounds, lights, different language. You didn't understand what was going on. You're just walking the streets, observing. It was an amazing starting point to the trip. While in Tokyo for a couple days, there was one place that we could not miss, which was Team Labs. Team Labs is kind of like a makeshift sensory experience warehouse where you go in and they have different rooms filled with different lights and artwork to make you feel like you're in a different world. I really liked Team Labs. I highly recommend it. You'll probably spend about an hour there. One thing that was unique is that you're not allowed to bring your shoes in there because part of the experience is feeling the ground underneath your skin, both with water and different lights. Overall, it was an experience of all senses. A lot of tourists were there, but it was worth going to. After a couple days in Tokyo, we headed over to the mountainside town of Hakone. Hakone gets a lot of Tokyo tourists that like to get away from the city bustle and also is known for having one of the best viewpoints of Mount Fuji. The downtown area is really pretty with a nice little river that runs through it where you can do shopping and get gifts for friends and family. Hakone has an open air museum, which is really cool, and we highly recommend it. There you can find sculptures and local art from people all around Japan. We decided to go up to the cable cars to try to get a view of Mount Fuji. As I looked into the distance and saw the snow-capped mountain, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The cable car was a lot of fun where you could also see the thermal activity that happens up in Hakone in the mountains. After a quick stop in Hakone, we headed over to the second biggest city in Japan, Osaka. Now I must say, one of my biggest regrets of the trip was not spending more time in Osaka. We only spent 2 days there, but I wish we would have spent more. One of the most lively parts of the city is Dotonbori, which is a downtown area filled with lights, shopping, all kinds of activities and street food. While in Osaka, we were fortunate enough to have snagged a spot at a local sumo match, which was one of the coolest things I have ever experienced. I got to sit up in the crowd amongst Japanese locals and watch a legit sumo match, which lasted for multiple hours and was probably one of the coolest things I did while in Japan. One of the coolest pieces of architecture that I saw in all of Japan was in Osaka, and it was called the Umeda Sky Building. It has a huge circle in the middle of the building with a beautiful viewpoint of the cityscape of Osaka. We also checked out the Osaka Castle, which was located in the downtown area. Beautiful and highly recommended if you're in Osaka. After a few days in Osaka, we headed over to the nearby town of Nara. Nara is a picturesque town known for having deer that roam around the city. Nara had some of my favorite temples in all of Japan that I visited. One of my favorites was Hasadera Temple, which is a little outside of Nara, but well worth the visit. There were multiple flights of stairs to climb, but the view was well worth the effort. One of my favorite aspects of Hasadera Temple is that there's barely any tourists there. So when you go and you're at the top of the mountain viewing the temple grounds, you can enjoy the sight by yourself and you're not bombarded by tourists. We couldn't miss Todai-ji Temple, which is home to a giant Buddha inside that takes your breath away when you stand next to it. The temple was originally built in 728 AD. We were lucky enough to catch the Omizutori Fire Festival, which is held every year from March 1st to the 14th at Todai-ji Temple. This tradition has been taking place in the same exact temple for the last 1,250 years. Our next stop was Kurashiki, a small coastal town across from Shikoku Island. Here we spent the night and got to check out the classical downtown area. There's a river that runs through the town with shopping and a temple on top of the hill that overlooks the city. The next morning we took a ferry into Seto Inland Sea to the island of Naoshima, known as Japan's Art Island. Naoshima is an island in the Kagawa Prefecture, known for its contemporary art installations scattered throughout the island. We got the chance to stay in some Japanese traditional yurts right along Gotanji Beach. We were only about 10 minutes walking distance from the Benesi House Museum and also close walking distance to Yayoi Kusama's Yellow Pumpkin, which is a famous art piece that sits on the short pier in Gotanji Beach. The island is not very big, and often renting a bike is the best way to get around and catch all the art sites throughout. The natural beauty of Naoshima Island is breathtaking. Even just stopping on the side of the road to take a glance at the look of the Seto Inland Bay with the islands off the coast of Shikoku is an incredible sight to see. Some notable sites to see were the Chichu Art Museum, Benesse Art Museum, and the Li Ufan Art Museum. You'll find little art installations all over the island that make every corner interesting. We took one day to explore the nearby island of Teshima, which is also known for its art museums. We rented a bike there and we were able to trek the whole island in a few hours. We visited Teshima Art Museum, a stunning art museum located right on Tonosho Bay. Our next stop was Fukuoka, situated on the bottom end of the Sea of Japan, across from South Korea. To get to Fukuoka, we hopped on Japan's ultra-famous bullet train. Also known as the Shinkansen, the bullet train route runs from the north of Japan just south of Hokkaido, all the way to the very southern Kagoshima Prefecture. Travelers visiting Japan can purchase a 7, 14, or 21-day Japan Railway Pass, also called the JR Pass, which allows for unlimited rides on the Shinkansen, with prices ranging from $340, $540, and $680 for the 3 options. The bullet trains run on time, they're fast, clean, and efficient. Out of all the cities that we visited throughout Japan, Fukuoka was probably one of the most surprising. It was a lively city with lots of young people and things to do. Canal City Mall was a sprawling mall filled with good shopping and even had a beautiful fountain show. Outside they had tons of food vendors with a nearby river that runs through the city. We only spent the day in Fukuoka, but if I could do it over again, I would spend more time in the city. The next morning we headed out to the small tourist town of Yufuin, but in an interesting fashion. We took the classic train ride called Yufuin no Mori, which is a limited express train started in 1989 that links Fukuoka to Yufuin. The train has a classic look reminiscent of something from the early 20th century. The scenery headed to Yufuin was stunning, with woods and rivers in the distance. We arrived in the small town of Yufuin. Yufuin has great shopping with little stores full of handmade Japanese goods from the area. There was some delicious street food that we had to try.
So sad.
We only had limited time in Yufuin and could not miss the most popular tourist spot, Yufuin Floral Village. The Floral Village is a little photogenic block in Yufuin with gifts and shopping based off of the look of England's Cotswold region. There were many tourists, but it was worth the visit, especially if you're a fan of Ghibli, Snoopy, or anything similar. After Yufuin, we headed just past Yufuin to maybe one of the most interesting places in all of Japan, Beppu. Beppu is known for its thermal activity and is considered to be one of the most thermally active cities in all of Japan. Japan sits on 4 tectonic plates, which causes much thermal activity and earthquakes throughout the country. Because of this, there are many onsens throughout the city of Beppu. Onsens are hot springs and public baths that are very popular throughout all of Japan. Onsens in Japan have specific etiquette enforced, which typically requires full nudity to enter and prohibits tattoos. This was quite the culture shock for me as an American. Men and women are separated and typically families will go together, such as father and son, as well as friends from school. Onsens are made for relaxation, and Beppu was actually a health resort for wounded samurai during the Kamakura period. Walking around the city, you'll find random steam coming out of the ground, which derives from the over 2,000 thermal hot springs which are found throughout the city of Beppu. Beppu lies between Mount Sorumi and Beppu Bay. You can go up to the mountain by cable car, and once you get to the top, there's an awesome view of Beppu and the bay. We went to a local restaurant in Beppu where you cook your own food using the steam from the thermal activity found under the ground in Beppu. It was quite the experience. In our eventual trek back to Tokyo, we headed to the next city, Hiroshima. In 1945, Hiroshima was the site of the first ever atomic bomb that was dropped by the United States. It's estimated that between 90,000 to 160,000 people were killed in the dropping of the first atomic bomb. It turned most of the city to dust, and only one structure remained at the epicenter from the blast, the Genbaku Dome. It is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Standing in the actual place where the first ever atomic bomb was dropped only 80 years ago showed me the reality of war and how ugly it can get for innocent people caught in the crossfires of it. We also got to see Hiroshima Castle, which was rebuilt after the blast. While in the city, we had to try the very famous Japanese savory pancake called okonomiyaki, which is very famous from Hiroshima. Hiroshima was another one of those cities that I just wanted to spend more time in. One day does not do it justice. There's so many gyms you can find on every corner. The next morning, we booked a beautiful ferry that took us from Hiroshima to the Ehime Prefecture, which is part of the greater Shikoku Island. The ferry was very exquisite, with food options on board and a beautiful upper deck area to observe the magnificent views of the Seto Inland Sea as we returned once more to explore the lesser-known Shikoku Island. Upon our arrival to Shikoku, we made our way down to Matsuyama, the biggest city on Shikoku Island. The first thing I needed to do was get a haircut, and getting a Japanese haircut for the first time was definitely a unique cultural experience that I won't forget. We checked out Matsuyama Castle, which is one of the 12 original castles from Japan, which survived the post-feudal Meiji restoration since 1868. The compound was enormous, with views stretching all across Matsuyama as the castle sits on a mountain. We woke up the next morning to what would be the most adventurous thing that we did on the entire trip throughout Japan, cycling the Shimanami Kaido. Shimanami Kaido is a collection of bridges that span from the island of Shikoku to mainland Japan. There's a string of 7 islands connected by bridges that span roughly 70 kilometers or 43 miles from one end to another. It is a well-known cycling route, with cyclists typically starting in either the cities of Onomichi or Imabari and riding from one end to another. We began the Shimanami Kaido from Imabari towards Onomichi. We rented bikes from the giant store in Imabari and spent the night in the middle of Shimanami Kaido on the island of Ikuchijima. The experience along the way was surreal, with incredible views of the islands in the foreground as we pedaled across huge white bridges and small town life from island to island. When we got to the island of Ikuchijima, we checked out a nearby temple named Kusanji, which had amazing untouched temples with almost nobody there. There was also an underground shrine called the Cave of 1,000 Buddhas that was breathtaking to see. We woke up to a rainy drizzle as we continued on the Shimanami Kaido. After riding hours in the rain and cold, we were very pleased to arrive in Onomichi to public showers just outside of the bike store where the drop-off was. So this is why I love Japan. Right outside of the giant bike store here in Onomichi, there is a private shower, actually a couple of showers, and it's only 100 yen for a nice hot shower right after being soaked cold for hours and hours riding in the rain. You can come and take a nice hot shower. This was very helpful. This is why I love Japan. They're very efficient. If you want to watch a more in-depth video about the Shimanami Kaido, you can watch the video above here, or I'll leave it in the description below. We hopped back on the Shinkansen and made our way to the next city, Nagoya. Nagoya is a modern city known for its manufacturing in the automotive sector. The infrastructure was quite impressive here, with sleek architecture, big malls, and big developments. For anyone that's a fan of Studio Ghibli, Nagoya is home to Ghibli Park, which is dedicated to all things Ghibli. Here you can find park attractions based off of Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, and various other Ghibli classics. If you've never seen a Studio Ghibli film, they're a must-watch. It's essentially the Disney of Japan, and you'll see characters and symbols from Studio Ghibli all around Japan. We couldn't travel to Japan without going to the Japanese Alps. We came to Japan in the early spring, and therefore snowfall was still prevalent, causing most mountain access to be closed. We wanted to at least visit a few places on the edge of the Japanese Alps before heading to the coastal town of Kanazawa. En route, we stopped by two towns, Takayama and Shirakawa-go. The rain began to pour down when we arrived in Takayama and persisted throughout our time there, but we still tried our best to explore the city. Oftentimes when traveling, we can't control the elements around us, but we can control our attitude. The city had a very classical feel, with many shops and houses made of that deep brown wood you see in Japan, with scenic alleyways. While walking the streets in Takayama, we heard loudspeakers playing a melody, which actually is a signal for children to come home from playing outside. We heard this in other parts of Japan, and it's actually used in case of emergencies as well, because Japan is an earthquake zone and earthquakes are very common. So loudspeakers are used throughout almost every city to signal emergencies. After Takayama, we arrived in Shirakawa-go, located within the Japanese Alps. This photo-perfect town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for its traditional gaso sukuri houses, some of which are as old as 250 years. Gaso sukuri in Japanese actually translates to constructed like hands in prayer, because the houses have steep thatched roofs that resemble the hands of Buddhist monks pressed together in prayer. The architectural style developed over many generations and is designed to withstand the large amounts of heavy snow that falls in the region during wintertime without the use of nails. When we finally made it through the mountainous Gifu Prefecture, we arrived in the seaside town of Kanazawa. Kanazawa had a variety of sights to see in the city. We enjoyed the Kanazawa Castle, along with Kinroku Garden, DT Museum, and just cruising around Nishachaya district enjoying the movement of the city. Of all of the places that we went in Japan, the next location had more foreign tourists than any other location by far. That place, Kyoto. If you know anything about Japan, you probably heard of Kyoto. Kyoto has been named the 1,000-year capital due to being the capital of Japan from 794 to 1868. There are various sites in Kyoto that are well-known tourist attractions, such as Kinkakuji Golden Temple, Arashiyama Bamboo Forest, Nishiki Market, Fushimi Shrine, Arashiyama Monkey Mountain, and many, many temples. All of these sites are breathtaking, but in turn are packed with tourists. Some of my favorite things that I experienced in Kyoto had fewer tourists. One of those things was the Hanetsu Odori celebration of the coming spring season, which occurs every fourth Sunday of March at Zushin-in Temple in Kyoto. We explored the temple grounds before the celebration and enjoyed the serenity of the nature and historical site. The Hanetsu Odori dance is dedicated to Ono no Komachi, who was a poet known for her significant beauty from Kyoto, dating back to around 900 AD. There are 3 performances at different times. First is the Hanetsu Odori, performed by local girls from a nearby school, clad in pink costume, danced in honor of Ono no Komachi, followed by a classic Japanese dance performed by Imayo, accompanied on koto. The final climax is a dragon dance. A mythical figure, together with a lady impersonating Ono no Komachi, enters the stage. They are followed by 4 dragons who try to overpower them. The mythical figure draws his sword and cuts the heads of the 4 dragons. This experience was one of the most profound that I had in all of my trip throughout Japan. It transported me back in time and made me feel as though I had a glimpse of the true essence of Japanese culture and tradition. Between late March and early April is the time of the cherry blossoms in Japan, the famous pink and white sakura trees that bloom throughout Japan. Scattered around Kyoto, you will find cherry blossoms lining the streets and accompanying beautiful ancient temples. It's one of the most special times to be in Japan, as this phenomenon of cherry blossom season only lasts for a couple weeks. Standing under a cherry blossom in real life is a unique feeling, and if you get the chance, definitely visit Japan during this magical cherry blossom season. On the streets of Kyoto, you may be lucky enough to see geisha walking the streets. A geisha is a traditional Japanese female entertainer skilled in various Japanese arts, including dance, music, and conversation. They are known for their distinctive white makeup, elaborate kimonos, and traditional hairstyles. The history of geishas dates back to the 18th century, initially started as male performers called hanamachi. Over time, women began to dominate the profession, and by the late 19th century, geishas became an established cultural icon in Japan. They played a significant role in the social life of the Edo period and have continued to be a symbol of Japanese culture and refinement, although in more limited capacity today. We had the unique pleasure of attending a geisha experience in Kyoto, where various geisha danced and sang on stage, telling stories from the Edo period and entertaining the crowd. Unfortunately, no photos or videos were allowed in the show. Although Kyoto gets tons of foreign tourists, it is without a doubt definitely recommended that you visit because there's so many ancient sites to see. It has such a cultural significance in Japan, and it's well worth visiting. It was now time for us to make our way back to the heart of Japan, Tokyo. Before getting there, we stayed in the seaside town of Kamakura. Kamakura, located south of Tokyo, has significant historical and cultural importance in Japan. Founded in the late 12th century, it became the political center during the Kamakura period from 1185 to 1333, when the first shogunate was established by Minamoto no Yoritomo. This period marked the rise of the samurai class and the shift from the imperial to military rule. We were lucky enough to stay with a Japanese family while in Kamakura, which made the experience even better. The Great Buddha of Kamakura is a great sight to see. It was originally built in 1252 and has been an open-air Buddha since the 15th century. So before arriving in Tokyo, the powerhouse of Japan, I want to talk about some quirky and cultural things from Japan that you don't see in any other country. Vending machines. You will see them everywhere. On the corner of streets, in the mountains, metro stations, or anywhere you are in Japan, you will find a vending machine. And almost anything can be put into a vending machine. I saw vending machines full of only sriracha sauce. I saw vending machines full of bugs you can eat, as well as gourmet dinners and more. Vending machines are just kind of part of the culture here. Another thing, Japanese toilets. They are literally the best invention ever.
This seat right here is heated. Secondly, you clean your butt with water. So you have an option for the rear, for the front. You can even put music on. So that when you're making noises, it's not obvious. You can adjust the pressure. It's amazing. I mean, the toilets here are top notch. This is just a public toilet. Pretty crazy.
The 7-Elevens are on steroids here. It's not weird to eat lunch or dinner at a 7-Eleven. The food quality is actually really good. The 7-Elevens are so good here, you can literally buy a cup full of fruit, blend it up into a delicious smoothie, and it's only a couple bucks. The society is so safe here that they literally have open clothing stores with nobody working inside.
This is a self-serve clothing shop. You have a little vending machine here with the prices. There's no employees in here, nobody. Only in Japan.
This would never work in the US. Restaurants and advertisers will use fake food on display outside of their establishments to entice you to want to enter. The fake food is so realistic that you almost can't tell the difference. It's widely considered rude and disrespectful to eat and walk in Japan. You'll see signs through many cities that says no eating and walking. The reasoning behind this may be that eating and walking leads to more littering and also shows a lack of appreciation for the food, as well as being messy or inconsiderate to others. Lastly, there's no tipping in Japan. It can actually be considered insulting, as Japanese take pride in exceptional service without tips. Our last city to conquer before leaving Japan was the city of Tokyo. 41 million inhabitants live here. It is the most populated city on Earth. Tokyo has more people than the entire country of Canada combined. Its culture spreads worldwide. The fashion game here is unmatched. The cuisine, exquisite. You'll find animations on every corner. There is an unending amount of things to do and see in this city. We got up early to visit what is considered the largest fish market in the world, the Sekuji Fish Market. It was a chilly morning, so we opted for the ultra-famous tamagoyaki, which is a Japanese omelet of sweet eggs served on a stick. If you come here, you gotta try it. There are so many sights and sounds in this bustling market of Tsukiji. Come here in the morning to observe how business is done in the biggest sea market in the world. Just down the road is the Imperial Palace, home to the Emperor of Japan. The imperial lineage of Japan is said to be one of the oldest continuous hereditary monarchies in the world, dating back to 660 BC. To tour the Imperial Palace, a reservation is required, otherwise you will not be able to get in. In Japan, reservations are widely used for anywhere you go, and it's highly recommended if you have a place on your list, check to see if you need to make a reservation before going. Waiting in line for specific events, restaurants, or stores is a common sight when in Tokyo. Apart from the Imperial Palace grounds, there are various gardens and parks nearby. The East National Gardens was a great stop with beautiful views of the city and iconic traditional Japanese structures. Japanese culture tends to be very shy, with the younger generation avoiding social contact as much as possible. This shyness has opened the door to an obsession for video games and digital media, with many of the most famous video games in the world being produced in Japan. This obsession is played out in the arcades of Tokyo, which are found sprawling throughout the city. So I thought I was decent at playing video games. The guys here are on a completely different level. The shyness of Japanese culture has also led to a fascination with robots and technology. This fascination gave birth to robot cafes, a cafe essentially ran by robots. There was one robot cafe that was the most well-known in the city that we couldn't miss, Dawn Robot Cafe. There are an abundance of cute little robots delivering coffee on wheels. Even the bartender was a robot, shaking up some awesome drinks. At first, I thought it wasn't the most impressive considering the robots are not autonomous. But I came to find out that the people controlling the robots are actually disabled people, and through these robots, they can interact and still be connected to the outside world. That's a pretty cool mission.
Arigato.
A great day trip from Tokyo is the city of Yokohama, which is located just a little bit south of the city of Tokyo. Yokohama is home to the Cup Noodle Museum, where you can learn about the history of cup noodle, which I found quite interesting. It's also home to the biggest Chinatown in Japan, where you can try delicious Chinese food and buy gifts and souvenirs. Tokyo is home to the busiest crosswalk in the world, Shibuya Crossing. The crossing allows pedestrians to walk in multiple directions simultaneously, creating a mesmerizing flow of people. It's said that over 2.4 million people cross this crosswalk every day. It is surrounded by neon lights, towering video screens, and bustling shops, making it a vibrant symbol of Tokyo's urban culture. If you know anything about Asian culture, you've most likely seen maneki neko, often referred to as the beckoning cat. It is a popular Japanese cat figurine believed to bring good luck, prosperity, and good fortune, and is used in Japan, China, and other East Asian cultures. This beckoning cat figurine was said to have originated from the Gotokuji Temple, located in Setagaya, Tokyo. It is believed that the temple's connection to the beckoning cat dates back to the 17th century during the Edo period. According to the story, the temple's founder, a priest, was living in poverty and praying for a way to improve his fortunes. One day, a stray cat that he had been caring for raised its paw in a beckoning gesture as if inviting someone. Shortly after, a passing samurai who was intrigued by the gesture decided to visit the temple. The samurai's visit led to the temple's fortunes improving, and he later became a donator to the temple. In gratitude, the temple began to place statues of the maneki neko cat to symbolize the cat's role in bringing good luck and prosperity. Over time, this legend became associated with the Gotokuji Temple, and today, the temple is known for its large collection of maneki neko statues, with thousands of them on display. Visitors often come to the temple to pray for good fortune and to purchase maneki neko figurines as a token of good luck. If you're hungry, Tokyo has an unlimited amount of delicious foods you can try. You can't go wrong with sushi served on a conveyor belt, and many spots offer sushi as cheap as $1 per roll. If you want an awesome view of the Tokyo Tower that is free, check out the Azabudai Hills Mori Tower. Down below is an awesome place to take a stroll and observe some crazy architecture or simply people watch. Traveling throughout Japan was honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, and I honestly feel like I didn't have enough time. There's still so many things about the culture and country that I've yet to soak up, but I feel very fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had, and I hope that one day you guys get the opportunity to travel to Japan because it's really a beautiful country full of unique culture, history, and people. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you got value out of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.